Hey guys, I got a table here set up for a Cities of Death game, and while I'm waiting for players to show up, if they do, day after Christmas, it's possible that they won't. But I'm gonna do some tutorials here for you on cover saves and what they are, because pretty much you can always guarantee that you're going to have a cover save in Warhammer 40k. So here is a setup. Now, normally most people would agree that this is an area terrain. It's a grassy, woodsy area. So 4+ cover save for the orcs that are inside of it. And I got a Dark Eldar Raider here. Now, so the rule for cover save for area terrain is that when you have a model, such as this orc Ardboy here, if you have a model of any part of its base is on the area terrain, it is in cover save. It has cover save. And that is part of the ruling there for cover save in area terrain. Now another thing is that, so all of these Ardboys here, I should keep them in 2-inch cohesion. So here's the Raider here. It's going to shoot at the Ardboys here, and then they all get their cover saves. Now the Ardboys are going to shoot back. Now you wouldn't think about it, but with the 5th edition rules, units shooting out of area terrain, the vehicle here will also get cover save. How does that work? Basically any unit that is 2 inches from the edge of the terrain, now like I said, within 2 inches, will be able to shoot at the opponent without them receiving a cover save. Now you got this rocket launcher here behind 2 Ardboys. Now we can agree that the Ardboy bases are 1 inch apiece, and they're right at the edge of the terrain, and so that makes the Ardboy with the rocket launcher outside of 2 inches. So if he shoots at the Raider would get a 4+ cover save against that rocket launcher. So let's talk about line of sight. Here's One Eye Willie. Line of sight in the books dictates that if you can see a leg, torso, head, arm, you have line of sight of the target, and the target can be shot at. What it doesn't cover is, doesn't say weapons, wings if you got a winged creature, or boss poles, banners, or anything else that's cosmetic to the unit. It states just leg, head, body, arms. So we talked about line of sight, and why line of sight is important is because it's also part of how cover saves work. So we got a war boss here. Now we got a war boss with a tank trap in front of him. He now has cover save just because he's got that one little piece in front of him that he can dive behind. So that's cover save. Of course, sandbags is cover save. And even this one little barrel will confer cover save against the war boss. Okay, so we have this Dark Eldar here. He is out in the open. He's not in area terrain. We have a line of orc boys here, and then we have 4 Ardboys behind them. Now let's say that the The orc boys, all they did is they moved and ran to this position, and the Ard boys behind them have just moved so they can shoot. They have range, and you're checking line of sight. Now, your own units, a model in a unit can see through other models. So these Ard boys, they have line of sight, and they're going to fire at the Dark Eldar. Now, because they are shooting through another unit, the Dark Elder model will get a 4+ cover save because of shooting through a unit. Now, if the models were such as this, move the... Now we got the Orc boys over here, and the Ard boys behind them. Now what would happen is that you'd have 50-50. These group of Ard boys here shooting their shots would get a 4+ cover save against for the Dark Eldar. These Ard boys over here would be able to shoot at the Dark Eldar, and the Dark Eldar would get no cover save because there's nothing blocking the shooting of the Ard boys. Okay, so we'll talk about another thing about line of sight and 50% cover and how that works as far as for cover saves. We now have a Dark Eldar warrior in the building. He's one level up. We have Orc boys in the front and Ard boys in the back. Now, obviously, the Dark Eldar could shoot at the Orc boys here, and they are within the Dark Eldar here is within 2 inches, because I know the building, I built the building, and so the boys here would not get a cover save with the Dark Eldar shooting out at them. Say though that the Dark Eldar wants to shoot at the Ard boys over here. Now I have adjusted my pointer here for line of sight to the base of the model and determined that this line of boys here does manage to mask the view of the 2 front guys. For the 2 back guys though, the Dark Eldar has clear line of sight at them and could shoot the 2 back guys with no problem because they're completely out in the open for his visual. But because 50% of the unit of the Ard boys is actually behind the Orc boys, actually confers a 4+ cover save to the Ard boys, regardless that I can see the 2 guys in the back. Because if I had one Ard boy as such as this, then that'd be a different story. Because I can see over 50%. I can see over 50% of the Ard boys behind the Orc boys. So if I was to shoot at this guy, all of them would not get a cover save for the fact that I can see over 50% of them. So that's a little complex way how to show line of sight and cover save. Now if we were to take our Dark Eldar here and put them up even higher, well then we can definitely agree that there would be no cover saves for the Ard boys because the Dark Eldar can see completely over the Ard boys. Cover save and line of sight. Now these Dark Eldar here, they're out of the vehicle and they're gonna shoot at the Ard boys over in the terrain. Now they actually have, I can see their legs. So being that the unit can actually see their legs, well, this one's got clear line of sight, so he's got no problem. But since I can see full-fledged legs and not just the boots, the Dark Elder can shoot at them. But since I'm shooting underneath the vehicle itself anyways, that confers a cover save. Now if we spin this around so we can see here that the Ardboys definitely have line of sight on the Dark Eldar, but when they shoot, because they're shooting through another object, even the vehicle, the Dark Elder would get a 4+ cover save. So here we got our Dark Elder warriors in front of the vehicle. We have Ardboys again with a rocket launcher. Now that even though that the Dark Elder are in front of the vehicle cannot gain a 4+ cover save with units in front of it. There are an exception. You can have another vehicle in the front, or you can also have a monstrous creature. So this monstrous creature is in front of the Raider and is blocking 50% of the view. So if the rocket launcher here, as soon as I can get the camera to show up, so the rocket launcher here could shoot at the Raider, but because that the Talos is in the front, the Raider would get a 4+ cover save. More ruling on vehicles and cover save, I suggest you go to Two Smoking Bolters YouTube channel. They did a very good video on vehicles and cover save. So here's another scenario for cover save. We got 4 Dark Eldar here, and they're behind a sandbag. And we got 4 Ardboys and a Knob rushing towards the Dark Eldar. Now the Dark Eldar, they can shoot at the knobs, and the 2 here in the front, they are in base-to-base contact with the sandbags here. That allows them to shoot over the bags, and the Ardboys would receive no cover saves because they are in base-to-base contact with that terrain piece. Now the other 2 Dark Eldar behind it though, they shoot, and the Ardboys would get a 4+ cover save because the 2 in the back are shooting over this terrain piece. Okay, another addition to line of sight and cover. So we have 6 Ardboys there with a Knob, and we got 5 Dark Eldar. Now we have a terrain piece here in the front. Now we're down to only being able to see 2 Ardboys. Well, the Dark Eldar can definitely see those 2 and can shoot at them with no problems. But since they only see less than 50% of the army, or the unit there, that unit would get a 4+ cover save. Now those 2 guys, the 2 Ardboys, they definitely can shoot back at the Dark Eldar, and the Dark Eldar would get no cover save if it's just those 2 shooting. But since this is a solid terrain piece here, those Ardboys behind it do not have line of sight and cannot shoot anyhow. And then if you go like this, 3 of them there, 3 of them behind the terrain, they still get their cover save. 4 in front and 2 behind, that unit no longer gets cover save. Now it does show in the book, like if you have it like this, where you see 3 of them just fine, and you have one that's partially covered, they say that you and the player can agree that it confers a 5+ cover save. But that's up for you and the player to agree upon. We have this area terrain here, and we see that we have our Ardboys on one side of it, Dark Elder on the other. Now, they Dark Elder have range of shooting at the Ardboys. The Ardboys do not have range because they all carry sluggas, but the Dark Elder have rifle and their splinter cannon. So the Dark Elder can shoot at the Ardboys. They have line of sight, but because they are shooting through this area terrain, the Ardboys will get a 4+ cover save. And even this one little barrel will confer cover save against the war boss. You can still shoot at him because you can see his arm, head, torso, and leg. But because this one object that is in the line of sight, he had a heart attack.